Hello my friends, welcome to The Big Picture. It's wonderful to have you joining us again at the Living Ministry Media Studios for week 6 of our Sabbath School Bible Study Ministry Development Series. This week we move right into Daniel chapter 5 and look at a Bible study entitled From Arrogance to Destruction. I'm Pastor Gary, mentor and chaplain to the Living Ministry Media team. It was October 12th. 539 BC. Yes, we do know the exact date. Belshazzar, king of Babylon, was in party mood. The invites were out. It was the society bash of the year. As the party heated up, the music moved to a higher tempo and the entertainment became ever more risque. I'll leave you to imagine the scene. As the party moved into the early hours of the morning, the king calls for the cups that had come from the temple in Jerusalem. Then it happens. In the midst of a drinking orgy, a mysterious hand appears to apply graffiti to the wall. The party falls into total disarray as Daniel is sought to read the mysterious writing and share a devastating interpretation with the king. This story has been told to children as an awe-inspiring example of the power of God. Yet sometimes in teaching this story, we miss the lessons that are meant for adults. You see, I suggest that contained in this chapter are two biblical truths that have been largely forgotten by much of the contemporary world. Somehow, I suggest the Christian world appears to have forgotten that judgment and personal accountability to God is as much a biblical teaching as is grace. Secondly, that the fall of physical Babylon is a template that answers significant questions about the fall of spiritual Babylon in the book of Revelation. But we will come to both of those in a moment. However, before we move to look at those issues, we need to know exactly what is really going on in this story. What were the final days of Babylon really like? Well, Babylon was no longer what it had been. Nebuchadnezzar had passed away 23 years earlier. The capital was in disrepair, but Belshazzar only wanted to party. 2 days earlier, October 10, 539 BC, Nabonidus, that was Belshazzar's father and joint king, had stood to fight Cyrus the Persian at Opis, north of Babylon. But Nabonidus had suffered a significant loss. On the evening of October 12, 539, Darius the Mede, acting on Cyrus's orders, is at the gate. Belshazzar's response was simple. He says, let's party. The Babylonian world is beset with crisis, but the party continues. Do you see how relevant this story is to us today? More importantly, do you see the big picture? Babylon is in disrepair, yet the leadership is in party mode. All thought of what God had taught Nebuchadnezzar a generation earlier is long gone. It's at this time that a mysterious hand gatecrashes the party. The hand writes momentous words. Then Daniel provides the interpretation. You remember those words. And this was the inscription that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. What we have here is a declaration of judgment on both Belshazzar and the physical nation of Babylon. Now, if you're presenting this week's Bible study, perhaps you could ask this question. Why do you believe God acted so decisively in dealing with what many might say was Belshazzar's trivial act? Was the picture bigger that caused God to judge both Belshazzar and the nation of Babylon? As you conclude your discussion of this question, you might want to suggest that in contemporary theology, many Christians struggle with the biblical teaching of a final judgment. This was something I didn't really understand early in my ministry. I remember at one time I was leading a prophetic seminar. We had come to Daniel chapter 7. Those of you who have studied Daniel previously would be aware that one of the recurring themes of Daniel 7 is judgment. One participant approached me after the seminar. My friend understood all that we had shared, and he didn't deny the interpretation, yet he was struggling. It was only after some dialogue that I realised that the reason he struggled was because the concept of any future judgment was actually foreign to him. You see, he was a grace-oriented Christian who struggled to comprehend how grace and personal accountability could possibly blend. He admitted he really struggled with some of the words of Paul concerning judgment. You remember Paul's words to the Corinthians. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body, according to what he has done, whether good or bad. Then again, when he spoke to Governor Felix, now as he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and judgment to come, Felix was afraid and answered, Go away for now, for when I have a convenient time, I will call for you. My friend didn't realise it, but he was struggling because the contemporary religious scene has chosen to emphasise grace and effectively ignore even Paul's understanding of judgment. You see, personal accountability doesn't seem to fit the contemporary grace picture. If you're leading this week's Bible study, why not discuss this matter? Perhaps you could ask this question. What does the story of God's judgment on Belshazzar and Paul's New Testament teaching about future judgment teach us about the reality of personal accountability to God? How does judgment fit into Paul's understanding of grace? Finally, as you conclude this week's Bible study, you might want to point out that the fall of Belshazzar's Babylon goes a great way to explaining what is meant by the fall of spiritual Babylon in the book of Revelation. But what do you think? In Revelation 17, a woman is presented who is named Babylon. The woman is wearing party paraphernalia, while in her hand a golden cup is uplifted. Could it be that the sin of Belshazzar on that fateful night might help us understand what is going on in spiritual Babylon? But that is a study for another occasion. Thank you for joining with us. I'm Pastor Gary. If you've appreciated our Sabbath School Bible Study Ministry Development Trial, please let us know. If there are any suggestions you might have, please share those with us. We may be contacted at the email address that's on your screen. May the Lord richly bless you as you teach from the book of Daniel this week. Really look forward to meeting with you next week. Thank you for joining with us.